everybody. This is Mr. Carden, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the rise of the labor movement. So, our key terms for the day: Samuel Gompers, he'll be an important person that we'll need to know, and collective bargaining. So, make sure you pay attention when we hear those two. Our big ideas. Number one, why did labor unions emerge in the late 1800s? And number two, what methods did unions use to achieve their goals? So y'all are going to like me today because this is probably going to be a pretty short presentation, but hopefully we'll have some good activities for you to do after this. All right. So why did labor unions emerge? There was a need for these labor unions, and they were created to protect the interest of the worker because business leaders were taking all of their wealth. And you've got to remember that this is a time period in the late 1800s where some of these men who built America, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, the J.P. Morgans, the Vanderbilts, these men gained so much wealth and did it so quickly and often at the expense of other people. And then they started to combine their wealth with other people, and they were helping the rich were helping the rich. Well, many people who were not wealthy started to think, hey, this is working well for them to, join up together and use their money and use their power. Why don't we unite? Why don't we join together? Because there were a lot of things that were going on in that time period related to labor that we would look at today and just, be blown away by if people were still having to work these same conditions. Now, unfortunately, there are still people in the world that work under the same conditions that we're going to talk about. But in the United States, most of these things are illegal. Now, one of the things that were being fought for was fair wages. If you think about it, in the time period, who do you think made the most? White males. Then below that, you would have, black males. And below that, you would have women. And then below that, you would have children. There was a hierarchy to how people were being paid, and it wasn't based upon how good of a job that you could do. Combating unsafe working conditions was a big deal as well. Many people were working in coal mines, and they would work 12-hour shifts in coal mines, working 6 days a week, and sometimes 6.5 days a week, and working these excessive hours, being constantly exhausted. It would take a toll on their body, but it would also take a toll on their mind. And mistakes would happen all the time. People died creating things. People died working in mines. People died, left and right. It was very, very common for people to die in workplace accidents. So they were trying to combat that. I also wanted to end child labor. For the poor, it was almost a necessity for your children to work. Whether they, worked in a bakery or whether they worked, for a newspaper company. Those jobs weren't super dangerous, but there were many jobs that children were having to work that were killing them. You have kids as young as 8 working in coal mines. You have kids not much older than that working in steel mills. Well, it doesn't really matter how smart you are. As an 8-year-old, you don't know enough about the world, and you can make mistakes. So accidents happened all the time. They also wanted to control excessive work hours. I kind of hit on this a second ago, but people were working 6 days a week and working an average of 12 hours a day. Some would work a little less than that, but it was very common for even children to be working over 60 hours a week. And people were also fighting to gain benefits, things like unemployment or insurance or workman's compensation, some way to take care of your family if something bad does happen. So all of these things were things that different unions were pushing for. Now, there were several powerful unions, and the first of the major unions was the National Labor Union, or the NLU. First large-scale union, it was a group of iron workers that came together. They saw what was taking place in big business, and they knew that they needed to come together in order to combat what was going on. So the NLU had between 600,000 and 800,000 at their peak. Uh, that's a lot of people, just in general. That's more than we have, in Pulaski County, like where Little Rock is. Uh, so the American Federation of Labor helped unionize wages rise 50% under the leadership of AFL President Samuel Gompers. So in his tenure as president, union hours also fell from 54.5 hours a week to 49 per week. And many union members turned to socialism. Now, you've probably heard about socialism previously. You've heard of Karl Marx before, and we'll talk about socialism and communism a little more as the year progresses. But socialism and collectivization under socialism were some principles that a lot of people, in particular the poor, thought were a good idea. It was a way to, take from the wealthy and then to redistribute that wealth to help everybody out. And in principle, there are some things about it that could potentially be okay. But we are human beings, and socialism, in my opinion, and in most rational human beings' opinion, socialism doesn't work. All right. To this day, there are many people who struggle with the idea of unions due to their connection with socialism. Now, what methods did the unions use to achieve their goals? Well, they did several different things, and it kind of depends on which union that we're talking about. Many used their political influence because they had so many people in some of these unions, like the NLU. If you have 600 to 800,000 people in your union, you can say, hey, I'm going to make sure that you don't win your election next year. I'm going to tell all of my people not to vote for you. If you don't help us out, you don't do this one thing for us. And unions have a lot of power. To this day, there are certain unions out there that have a major role to play in the election, even of the president. The teachers union is one of those. That's a very, very important one, or teachers unions. The NLU persuaded Congress to legalize an 8-hour day for government workers. So going from that average of 12 to 8. Collective bargaining, where union officials represented the workers and negotiated as a group with management. Now, let's say you've got 600,000 iron workers and they all want something. Well, it's hard for the company to hear 600,000 people exactly what they want when they're all screaming at them. So you get a union official, you get somebody who knows the ins and outs, knows the legality, and they are your mouthpiece. Okay? The AFL used strikes as its primary tactic. So it would shut down work. It would shut down factories. It would keep people from being able to work. And the AFL isn't the only one that has done this in the past. And there are plenty of people who have used strikes within recent history as well. Unfortunately, sometimes the strikes would turn violent. There are several different strikes in American history where the people that are striking were killed by police or paid security, like Pinkertons. There were times where people that are part of management were killed, and sometimes the police were killed. So all three of these things happened. So y'all, I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Please let me or your teacher know if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye.